As we gather today throughout Turtle Island, we remind you that we are situated on treaty and unceded Indigenous lands. This land is steeped in rich Indigenous history and home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people today. And as a country, we all have a responsibility for the stewardship of this land in which we live and work on. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that I am speaking on today. I am on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe peoples, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, as well as the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Huron-Wendat. This land is covered by Treaty 13 and the Williams Treaties, both still in effect today. As a student, I am constantly learning, and part of that learning is understanding that the land that we live on has a history that did not begin with us and does not end with us. Acknowledging that land reminds us that Indigenous peoples are not only part of our past, they are also here and now, continuing their cultures, languages, and relationships with the land. It also reminds us that colonization is not something that has just happened, it is something that still impacts their communities today. Being a student on this land means that I have a responsibility to not only learn in classrooms, but to also learn from history, from Indigenous voices, and from the land itself. It means thinking critically about what I've been taught, asking questions, and being open to perspectives that may even challenge my own. Even though we may be joining from different places today, I invite you all to reflect on the land that you are on and to remember that it sustains us. In return, we all have a responsibility to care for it as well.
Hanse, hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Quinn Rafi Antoine, and I am the lead of Indigenous Initiatives and Training at the Gord Downey and Cheney Wenjack Fund. Inspired by Cheney's story and Gord's call to build a better Canada, we aim to build cultural understanding and create a path towards reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. Before we begin, I'd like to just notify everyone that we might be covering some sensitive topics today, so we've shared some mental health resources. Thank you again for joining today. It's great to be here for a special DWF Live with Dr. Tasha Hubbard, Director of Singing Back the Buffalo. Dr. Tasha Hubbard is a writer, filmmaker, and professor at the University of Alberta. She has directed a number of documentaries for the National Film Board and has focused on Indigenous rights in Canada. Tasha is from Peepeekisis First Nation in Treaty 4 territory, and she has ties to Thunderchild First Nation in Treaty 6 territory. Tasha, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm going to jump into some questions, and please share as much as you are willing to. So question one is, what ultimately motivated you to create Singing Back the Buffalo?
Well, I had been working as a documentary filmmaker in the early 2000s. And it was around that time that I went to a wedding in Regina, and some elders who were at the wedding, and we were in the backyard at the reception, and they said, "Do you want to come with us? We're going to go see something special." So I said yes, and it was a buffalo ribstone, and it was so beautiful. I'd never seen anything like it before, and I just felt such a connection. And after that visit, I just thought about buffalo all the time. So I just at that point thought, I'm going to make a film about buffalo someday, but when I'm a better filmmaker, when I have a better understanding. And so I ended up changing my academic work to focus on buffalo stories and what they teach us. And so that, I just stayed on that journey for a long time. And I met a Blackfoot elder named Narcissus Blood, and he's who the film is dedicated to. He sadly passed away in 2015, but he and I started talking, and we both loved film, both loved buffalo, both loved history. And so we decided we were going to collaborate on a film about the buffalo. And we, met and talked and got a framework. And it was around that time that he sadly passed. So I put the film away. And then not too long after that, I got invited to go to a buffalo gathering in Montana. I went and I met Leroy Little Bear and Amethyst First Rider at that meeting. And then it was like, I think it's time to start again. And we started filming events in 2016. And I did have to take some time away to make Nipuestamasu and We Will Stand Up, but we kept filming significant Buffalo Treaty events and things like that. And then May of 2020, 2 months into the pandemic, I woke up at 5 a.m. and just had this like feeling, and it was like a voice in my head saying, you need to start now. So I called my team and I said, okay, we're going to focus on Buffalo now. And, we took us a little while to get all our financing and those sorts of things around making films in Canada. But we were ready to go by winter 2021. And we just started filming for about a year, almost 2 years.
Wow, that's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing. It sounds like, a lot of heart was put into this and behind this.
Sure.
Question 2, the film raises the concept of Buffalo consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
How do you define that, and why is it important for Indigenous communities and ecological healing?
Mm-hmm. So that phrase comes from Leroy Little Bear. He talks a lot about Buffalo consciousness, and my understanding really is that the buffalo is so significant in our lives as Indigenous peoples, and that we formed our governance structures by being taught by the buffalo. They are our teachers. My academic work was actually taking up the phrase that the education is the new buffalo. And I understood where people were coming from, because, education is something that was in the treaties. It was something our ancestors wanted for us to have the, ways of knowing, but not to have to give up our ways of knowing. And that's where the buffalo comes in. And so, buffalo consciousness is really about having that, what they teach us in our lives, having the thinking around community and having good relationships with one another. That's really what's inherent, I think, in that. And it's buffalo consciousness is also an awakening of remembering those pathways, remembering those relationships that we have with the buffalo and, all of the more than human beings that we share the land with.
The film talks about reconnecting with buffalo as relatives. What does that relationship mean to you personally?
I think that, coming off of buffalo consciousness is understanding that as Indigenous people, our family is not just our nuclear family. I mean, I think Western thinking really limits that notion of family. Indigenous thinking, it's much more expansive than that. And it's also beyond our human family, but understanding ourselves to be part of this complex web of relationships that is our environment, that is our ecological world that we live in. And so, understanding, and our stories tell us that, our buffalo stories talk about our buffalo as grandparents, as older brothers, as older sisters, as, and ultimately behind all of that is that we learn from them, that they're our teachers, and that they love us, and that we have agreements with them, and that, there's so many buffalo stories in any Indigenous culture in North America. But the heart of it is, to not, as human beings, to not see ourselves as superior, which is really embedded in a lot of Western thinking.
Yeah, I think that's a super important reminder. Thanks for sharing. What do you see as the biggest barrier to buffalo returning to traditional lands?
I think it is some of that ways of thinking, around, the separation, that, and I think the way, if we think of, if thinking is that humans are at the top and everything exists for humans' benefit, well, that opens the door to unequal relationships, to extractive policies, to, seeing the world only for our benefit, as opposed to seeing ourselves as part of the world, that we need our other beings. I always say, animals and birds and other beings, they know how to live out in the world, and take away our technology and take us out into the middle of anywhere. And, we are reliant, on other beings and other relatives who are on this land with us. So, I think it is about having some, having humility, having, having a sense of connection, and also having a sense of responsibility. And I think that's what's so great about the film is all of the people that I spoke with were people I'd learned from, and wanting people to be able to learn the same things that I was, and from people that are so inspiring and visionary.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Would you say buffalo rematriation is a form of reconciliation, and how can both Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples support the rematriation?
Yeah. I think part of what buffalo bring is a notion of balance. And, one of the things that I learned early on in my buffalo journey was that buffalo are matriarchal, that they're led by, a wise grandmother, and she teaches her daughters and granddaughters how to take care of the herd, how to lead. And, I thought about that, when I was younger. I had interviewed an elder about treaty, and he shared with me, he said, who else knows better than what a community needs than the grandmas of the community? And I've always thought about that. And I think that, that's how we organized ourselves because of that. And that it's not that, men don't have a place. Absolutely. We all have our place in ensuring that, people's needs are met, that the community is well. And, I think one of the effects of the, onslaught of colonialism is the imbalance that came, the thinking that came over, where women had been suppressed for a long time in a lot of those societies and were seen as property, and children were seen as property. And, that's the basis of our law system to this day, right? Is property law. So it's like, oh, that puts a real different spin on the world if you think about things as possessions versus, being in relationship. So again, that, that it's just balance. It's just the buffalo teach us that, to make sure that we're not only listening to certain voices, that we're always honoring, the wise grandmas, in our circles.
Thank you so much. There was a very powerful moment in the film that really resonated with me, where the buffalo appeared to respond to you singing, to the group of you women singing. What was that moment like for you when you all learned that the buffalo were in fact, acknowledging you guys?
Mm-hmm. It felt really special. We just felt so blessed. We had two women that came out, and the first time I went was 2020. There had been a group that had gone out in 2019, but on the 2020 group, two of the women, Glenda Abbott and Kyra Northwest, came with buffalo songs, and one Glenda had, and the other Kyra elders gave her before she came. And they were very special, and we they taught us these songs. And so we're hiking along, and you're just going along such a long, heavy, the pack's heavy, and how much farther is, in your mind. But so singing just helped us, it helped us stay on that trail and through that, the endurance that was needed. And, it was really special when, we had, in that trip, we realized they were really far up, and some got to go up and some didn't, to go see them. And we were hoping they'd come down. And so we sang to them, and we sang to them to honor them. And then on that trip, the parks told us they came down the next day, and we were like, oh, so then when we went on this trip, we're like, well, we're going to sing sooner, and we're going to make sure that, they know that we're here to honor them. And, we felt lucky. We ran into some people that had been looking for them, and they'd been out there a week, and they said, we haven't seen a trace of them. And we're like, oh, okay. And then it was like 20 minutes later when we came across the herd and startled them because we weren't expecting to see them. And we were like, wow, we're so lucky. And we just saw them every day. And we just kept saying, we're so lucky. And, you know, then when we left, we camped near the park border the last night. And one of the women went out to, you know, be on her own. And there was a grandma and daughter and babies. And so they had come all the way back with us. Again, we just thought, oh, we're really blessed. Like, we're so lucky they did that. And it wasn't until we were out for a while that the park, because they knew where we were. And then the park also has a few trackers on them, so they know where the herd is. And they made us an animation that, like, where we started, we started here, they started here, they came and met us, and then they stayed with us. And that was just so special.
So incredible, really. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really great learning a little bit more about you and this incredible project. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Thanks so much.
Miigwech to all those who tuned in today. You can find more episodes of our DWF Live on our YouTube channel. Be sure to like and subscribe to stay connected with future DWF Lives.